Most people don't miss out on love because it's unavailable. They miss out on it because they are occupying their own emotional space with anxiety, past ghosts, or an obsession with a timeline that was never theirs to control. You think you're single because you haven't met the right person yet, but the psychological reality is much more subtle. You are likely holding onto a quiet, exhaustion driven control loop that is actively crowding out the very intimacy you are searching for. I see this constantly in my work. People come to me exhausted, asking what strategy they need to deploy next, which apps to download, or how to tweak their profile to finally get results. If you are tired of that superficial dating advice and want deep psychological frameworks that transform your love life without losing your dignity, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We break down these exact human patterns every single week. The truth is, the moment right before a massive breakthrough in your love life rarely feels like a victorious breakthrough. It feels suspiciously like giving up. It's that exact moment where you throw your hands up and say, I am done forcing this. But there is a massive psychological difference between giving up in despair and dropping the illusion of control. Giving up means shutting down your heart, closing your doors, and letting bitterness take over. Dropping control means you stop trying to micromanage how, when, and through whom love arrives. Think about it this way. When you operate from a place of chronic romantic anxiety, your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats and validation. You enter every room, every conversation, every initial date with a hidden agenda. Is this the one? Am I enough for them? How do I make this work? You are subtly performing, adapting, and managing their perception of you. In psychology, this is known as external locus management, and it creates an invisible layer of tension that high-value, secure people can feel instantly. It acts like a repellent, pushing away the exact emotional safety you long for. When you are on the verge of finding genuine, lasting love, a subtle but profound shift occurs in your daily behavior. It's a quiet phenomenon I call the mirror signal, a specific change in how you react to uncertainty that virtually guarantees a high-value partner will enter your life within months. But before you can recognize that signal, you have to understand the massive emotional trap that causes 80% of people to walk right past their ideal partner, or worse, reject them within the first 10 minutes of meeting them. We are taught to look for passion, for instant sparks, for that immediate, intoxicating rush of chemistry that consumes our thoughts. We mistake that emotional turbulence for destiny. But what if that intense spark you've been chasing isn't a sign of alignment at all? What if it's actually a warning light from your nervous system, signaling that you've met someone who triggers your oldest, most familiar anxieties? When you begin to shift, your definition of attraction undergoes a radical transformation that completely disrupts everything you thought you wanted in a partner. I remember talking to a client who told me, with complete sincerity, Matthew, if I don't feel an instant lightning bolt on the first date, I just know it's not my person. I looked at her and asked a simple question. How have those lightning bolts worked out for you so far? She fell completely silent. The truth is that intoxicating spark we've been conditioned to chase isn't a sign of soulmate, level connection. In high-level psychology, we understand that an intense, immediate spark is often nothing more than your nervous system recognizing familiar childhood instability, emotional inconsistency, or unpredictable availability. When someone makes your heart race, your stomach drop, and your mind obsess over their next text, you aren't experiencing romance. You are experiencing a fight or flight spike. It's an emotional addiction driven by intermittent reinforcement. When a person gives you attention, then withdraws, and then randomly gives it back, your brain releases massive surges of dopamine. You mistake that chemical chaos for passion, while genuine stability feels jarringly unfamiliar. This is precisely why 80% of people walk away from their ideal partner within the first 10 minutes. When you meet someone secure, consistent, and genuinely available, they don't trigger that familiar panic. There is no game to play, no puzzle to solve, and no emotional mountain to climb just to feel worthy. Because your brain is conditioned to equate anxiety with attraction. Peace feels eerily like a lack of chemistry. You tell yourself, they're sweet, but there's just no spark, and you write off the exact person capable of giving you the love you claim to want. When you are actually on the precipice of finding real love, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. You start realizing that real attraction isn't built on high-stress highs and soul-crushing lows. It's built on deep, sustainable grounding. You stop evaluating people based on their potential. the fantasy of who they could be if they just changed a few key behaviors. And you start evaluating them based on their present reality. You look at their consistency, their character, and their emotional capacity right now. This internal recalibration directly feeds into the mirror signal I mentioned earlier. As your inner standard elevates, your external communication shifts automatically. You stop performing, you stop over-explaining your worth, and you stop trying to persuade people to choose you. But how does this recalibration translate into the ultimate diagnostic sign that love is right around the corner? It boils down to a fundamental transformation in your internal locus of control and your boundary system. Right before true love enters your life, your mind drops one specific question that has quietly dictated your dating life for years. In its place, it adopts a radical new orientation that completely rewires how you carry yourself in a room. But the moment you step into this new framework, it unleashes a psychological trap, a phenomenon known as the peace-panic paradox, that will test your emotional resolve the exact week a high-value partner appears. So what is this ultimate diagnostic sign? The number one indicator that you are on the absolute brink of finding love is not a mystical gut feeling or a sudden wave of romantic optimism. Is a fundamental structural shift in your boundary system. It's the precise moment your mind completely abandons the question, do they like me? And automatically replaces it with, do I actually like how I feel when I'm in their presence? Think about how profound that transformation really is. For years, your primary focus on a date or in early conversations was managing the other person's perception. You were auditing your own behavior, monitoring your tone, worrying if you sounded too eager, too distant, too smart, or too available. You were viewing yourself through their eyes. But when the mirror signal takes root, your internal locus of control snaps back into place. You step into the role of the evaluator rather than the candidate waiting to be interviewed. Psychology shows us that this single shift fundamentally alters your aura, your micro-expressions, and your speech cadence. You stop leaning in to seek approval. You stop over-explaining your boundaries or trying to negotiate with someone's clear lack of effort. If someone texts you inconsistently, you don't spend 3 hours decoding the message with your friends. You simply lose interest. Not out of anger or petty games, but out of a deep, calm realization that inconsistent effort is entirely incompatible with your life. This internal shift acts as a powerful natural filter. Emotionally unavailable people find this level of clarity deeply off-putting. They feed on your anxiety, your willingness to overfunction, and your desire to earn their attention. When you stop playing that role, they evaporate from your life because there is nothing left for them to consume. But to a secure, high-value partner, someone who is genuinely capable of real commitment, this quiet self-possession is the single most intoxicating trait on earth. It tells them instantly that you respect yourself, which means you have the emotional capacity to respect them. Your boundary system stops being a set of strict, angry rules you yell at people and becomes a quiet, effortless state of being. No longer audition for love. You simply present who you are, observe how they respond, and make a conscious choice based on reality. Yet here is where the psychological trap springs its jaw. The second you enter this grounded, self-possessed state and an exceptionally healthy partner walks into your life, your subconscious mind will attempt to execute a brilliant act of self-sabotage. This brings us directly to the peace-panic paradox, a psychological phenomenon that hits the exact week you meet someone truly good for you. If you don't know how to navigate this precise moment of internal panic, you will mistake your own healing for a reason to run away. The peace-panic paradox is the exact threshold where most people unknowingly destroy their own happiness. Here is how it happens. You finally do the internal work. Your boundary system shifts, and someone genuinely secure enters your life. They call when they say they will. They show up consistently. They don't make you guess how they feel about you, and instead of feeling pure bliss, a part of your brain suddenly goes into full-blown emergency alarm mode. You start waking up with a knot of inexplicable anxiety. Your mind desperately manufactures reasons why this won't work. You begin nitpicking their appearance, their laugh, or how they talk about their hobbies. You tell yourself, there's just no spark, or I am just not feeling that overwhelming pull. But psychology shows us what is actually occurring beneath the surface. For years, your nervous system has associated love with chaos, uncertainty, and pursuit. Tranquility feels foreign to an ego that is used to fighting for its worth, so it interprets genuine emotional safety as a profound threat. Remember that emotional trap I warned you about earlier. The reason why 80% of people reject their ideal partner within the first 10 minutes. This is the climax of that trap. You are confusing the absence of anxiety with an absence of attraction. When a secure person offers you a clear runway with no hurdles, your brain panics because it doesn't know how to navigate peace. So, what does it do? It urges you to run back to the familiar discomfort of an unstable ex or a charming, emotionally distant ghost who makes you work for their attention. I remember working with a client who met a guy who was attentive, kind, and completely clear about his intentions. By week 3, she was convinced she needed to break it off because she felt suffocated. When we stripped away the narrative, she realized he wasn't suffocating her at all. He was simply standing still, waiting to be loved, and she had never experienced a partner who didn't make her run a marathon just to stay in the room. His presence was a mirror holding up her own vulnerability. To cross this crucible, you must learn to tolerate the quiet of emotional peace long enough for real attraction to mature. Passion with a secure partner isn't a fiery explosion that burns out in 3 months. It is a slow-burning flame that builds as trust deepens. But to navigate this transition without sabotaging the best thing that has ever happened to you, you need an actionable blueprint. You need to know the exact 3-word phrase that instantly shifts your energy out of panic mode whenever fear creeps in. And you must run a specific diagnostic test within the first 24 hours of meeting someone new. This test acts as a bulletproof reality check, allowing you to instantly distinguish between real, quiet intimacy and performative charm long before you invest your heart. When that sudden urge to run hits you, or when your mind tries to convince you that peace is boring, you need an immediate shift in your internal posture. The key to staying grounded is a precise 3-word phrase that recalibrates your posture instantly. I am choosing. Think about how fundamentally that changes your internal framework. The old paradigm had you trapped in passive, anxious expectation, whispering to yourself, I hope they text, I hope they like me, or I hope I don't mess this up. That mindset hands your personal agency over on a silver platter. But when you anchor yourself in I am choosing, you move from a passive recipient to an active decider. You realize that you aren't just reacting to whether someone is attracted to you, you are evaluating whether their character, consistency, and emotional availability earn a place in your life. To make sure you never mistake performative charm for actual readiness again, you must run the 24-hour reality check every single time you meet someone new. It is a remarkably simple diagnostic tool, but the psychological clarity it provides is absolute. Within 24 hours of interacting with a prospect, stop analyzing their words, their charisma, or how impressive their life looks on paper. Instead, ask yourself one question: what happened to my internal state after I stepped away from them? Psychology shows us that performative manipulators and narcissists leave behind a very specific residual signature. High excitement followed immediately by an underlying spike of exhaustion, self-doubt, or mental obsession. You walk away feeling wired, checking your phone continuously and replaying every minute of the interaction. True alignment, however, produces the exact opposite reaction. When you spend time with a secure, high-value partner, you step away feeling settled. Your nervous system feels quiet. You feel more like yourself, not less. That calm after the interaction is the true test of compatibility. Performative charm demands your attention, but genuine emotional safety restores your energy. When you combine this 24-hour reality check with your updated boundary system, the entire landscape of your love life shifts. You no longer walk into dating with fear because you know you are no longer at the mercy of who chooses you. You are guided by your own self-trust, protected by your internal boundaries, and completely clear on what real connection feels like. The journey to finding love was never about fixing yourself until you were perfect enough to be picked. It was always about dropping the illusion of control, stepping out of the anxiety loop, and becoming so deeply rooted in your own self-respect that true love can finally find a clear, open space to land. When you change how you see yourself, the world has no choice but to mirror that truth right back to you.